It was never meant to be like this. I had no plans, no expectations, and certainly no reason to believe my life would be turned upside down in one single, unremarkable moment. You see, I'm the kind of guy who's usually glued to a routine, always methodical, never chasing surprises. The thrill-seeking part of me is a stranger, buried deep in the past. But life has a way of throwing the most bizarre, unexpected turns at you when you least expect them. My name is Nathan, and I wasn't looking for trouble. I never have been. The truth is, the only thing I had on my mind that night was catching up on some overdue work and relaxing for a few hours before heading to bed. And the fact that I ended up where I did, in that moment, was the kind of thing I'll probably never be able to shake off. It was a moment where time stood still, and I realized how little I really knew about the woman I had shared my life with. Here's how it happened. I was at the office late, like most nights. I had a lot on my plate, and the last thing I wanted to do was let it spill into my weekend. My wife, Amelia, had texted me a few hours before, saying she was meeting some friends at a local cafe after work. No big deal. She had her circle of friends, and I had mine. I thought I'd finish my reports and join her later, maybe grab a drink and call it a night. But when I finally packed up to head home, something was different. There was a strange stillness in the air. It wasn't like the usual buzz of the city at night. It was the kind of stillness that makes your senses alert, a feeling that something just wasn't right. I walked out of the office building and glanced at my phone, wondering if Amelia had messaged me about meeting up. No text, no missed calls. I sent a quick, "Hey, where are you?" but didn't think much of it. Still, I couldn't shake the strange sense that something was off. I took a different route home that night, not for any particular reason, just a change of pace. I don't know why, but it felt like the right thing to do. The streets were quieter than usual, the glow of the streetlights casting long shadows along the pavement. I turned onto a side street, one I didn't usually take, and there, in the distance, I saw something I hadn't planned on seeing. Amelia's car. It was parked outside a building I didn't recognize, an old, run-down bar that I knew had been closed for years. The dim lights inside flickered, but I could just make out the silhouettes of people inside. My heart skipped a beat. Why was her car there? She hadn't mentioned anything about stopping by a bar, especially not on a Friday night. She never really went out drinking on her own. But there it was, unmistakably her car, parked haphazardly on the street. I shouldn't have followed up. I should have turned around and just gone home. But curiosity, like a slow-burning fuse, got the better of me. My instincts told me something was wrong, but I couldn't quite place why. I parked my car just around the corner, out of sight, and waited. Maybe she was meeting someone she didn't want me to know about. Maybe it was nothing. I watched the bar's entrance for what felt like forever, my breath shallow, unsure of what I was hoping to see. Then, the door opened. Amelia walked out, laughing. She was with a man I didn't know. He was tall, his frame broad, and he leaned in close as they talked. She laughed again, the kind of laugh that wasn't meant for just anyone. A laugh that was too intimate, too carefree. My stomach tightened. I couldn't move, couldn't look away. Amelia wasn't just leaving the bar. She was being led away by that man. His hand rested on her back as they walked toward an alleyway, talking in hushed tones. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in place. The thoughts racing through my head were a blur. How long had this been happening? Was this the first time? Could I trust my own eyes? The man opened a door to what appeared to be an apartment building, and Amelia followed him inside. The door shut behind them, and I was left standing there in the dark, feeling something shift inside me that I couldn't undo. I knew I should have driven away, pretended like I hadn't seen anything, but I couldn't. My hands were shaking as I fumbled with my phone. My mind was screaming for answers. I wanted to call her, but I couldn't find my voice. I wanted to shout, to demand an explanation, but my body refused to move. Instead, I did something I never thought I would do. I waited. I stayed in the car, in the shadows, watching. I needed to know what was going on. I had to. My thoughts were clouded with so many questions, but none of them made sense. I knew this wasn't just some innocent mistake. It wasn't just a casual meeting between friends. Something was happening that I wasn't prepared for. Something that would change everything. Minutes passed, and the door opened again. The man stepped out first. He was adjusting his jacket, his face serious as he looked around. Amelia followed him out of the building, but this time, she wasn't laughing. Her face was pale, her eyes avoiding the streetlights as if she was trying to hide. She quickly looked over her shoulder and walked off in the opposite direction, disappearing into the dark. I don't know what I expected to feel in that moment. Anger, shock, confusion, maybe all of it. But I felt hollow, numb. I waited a few more moments, the sound of my own heartbeat louder than anything else. Finally, I made my decision. I didn't want to confront her yet. Not there. Not like that. But I couldn't let it go. I couldn't just walk away from this. I started my car, the engine's hum seeming too loud in the silence, and drove away from that street, from the place where everything changed. I didn't know how things were going to unfold, or if I'd ever get the answers I needed, but I knew one thing for sure. The woman I thought I knew was no longer who I thought she was. And somehow, I was about to find out just how far the deception ran. The drive home felt longer than it should have, as though I was moving through molasses. The streets blurred past me, but my mind was locked on a single moment: Amelia disappearing into that building. I couldn't make sense of it. My heart was pounding in my chest, my thoughts bouncing from one possibility to the next. Had she been seeing this man for weeks? Months? Was I completely blind to what was going on under my nose? I couldn't help but replay every conversation, every moment that now seemed so trivial, so meaningless in light of what I'd just seen. All the time she'd seemed a little too distracted, a little too distant. Was that the beginning of this? Had there been signs that I missed? I pulled into our driveway, the familiar sound of the gravel beneath my tires almost comforting, but everything felt off. The house, the porch light, even the creak of the front door as I walked in felt unfamiliar. I didn't know if it was because I was hyper-aware of everything around me now, or if the house had actually changed, but I felt like I was walking into someone else's life. Amelia's purse was still on the kitchen counter, her shoes neatly placed by the door, signs that she had come home not too long ago. I stood in the kitchen for a while, staring at the empty space where we usually had dinner, the place where we had laughed, shared stories, and planned our future. Now, all of that seemed so distant, like a different life entirely. I couldn't shake the image of her leaving with that man, laughing and looking so at ease. I wanted to believe there was some logical explanation, that maybe I was overthinking things, but deep down, I knew the truth was staring me right in the face. I sent her a text. "Where are you?" It was vague, not wanting to come off as accusatory just yet. I needed to hear it from her, to hear the lie or the truth, whatever it would be. She texted back almost instantly. "Just got home. Was meeting with a friend. Sorry, had to run some errands. Missed you." Her reply was so perfectly timed, so rehearsed. I could almost hear her trying to convince herself more than me. My blood ran cold, but I didn't respond immediately. I just stared at the screen, reading the message over and over. It didn't make sense. If she had truly just gotten home, why hadn't I seen her car pull into the driveway? Why hadn't she answered her phone earlier when I called? Was she trying to protect herself, or did she genuinely believe I wouldn't question her? I waited, letting the silence of the house envelop me. My mind was spinning. The man I saw her with, I didn't know him, and the more I thought about it, the more it troubled me. Why hadn't she mentioned him? She was always transparent about her friends, her coworkers, but this guy? Nothing. And the way she looked at him, the way she laughed and let him touch her arm, it felt wrong. She wasn't just meeting a friend. I knew that now. Something more was going on, and I wasn't sure I was ready to face it. I decided I had to confront her, but not just yet. Not tonight. I didn't want to make any rash decisions based on my emotions. So I sat there in the dim light of the living room, alone with my thoughts, trying to piece together what had been happening right under my nose for who knows how long. Every part of me was screaming to go to her, to demand the truth. But another part of me, a calmer, more rational part, told me I had to wait. I needed to be sure. This wasn't something I could take back. If I was going to confront her, I needed solid ground, not half-baked assumptions. As I sat there, my phone buzzed. It was a message from her again, but this one was different. "Nathan, I think we need to talk. Can we meet tomorrow?" My heart skipped. The text was short, but the tone, it wasn't casual. It wasn't apologetic, either. It was a message that said she knew. She knew I'd seen something. I wasn't sure what to make of it, but one thing was clear. She was trying to control the narrative. She was preparing herself for whatever I was about to say. I didn't respond immediately. I wanted to, but I couldn't. I wanted to feel anger, but all I felt was this suffocating sense of confusion. I thought I knew her. I thought we were solid. But everything had just come crashing down in a single moment, and now I was left to pick up the pieces. I knew I couldn't sleep, not with everything hanging in the air. I paced back and forth, my mind racing with questions, with scenarios, each one more painful than the last. I considered calling her, demanding an answer, but I didn't. I knew that would only give her the chance to spin her story. No, I needed more than just an explanation. I needed the truth. The night passed slowly, but finally, morning arrived. The sunlight felt foreign, like it had no place in the storm raging inside me. I texted her back, finally. Sure. Where? I needed to know what she was going to say, where she wanted to meet. She replied with an address to a small cafe across town, a place we used to go to when we first started dating. It used to be our spot, our little secret place. I hadn't been there in years, not since we had become comfortable, since we had settled into the rhythm of our lives. I got dressed, the weight of the situation pressing down on me as I thought about everything. The cafe felt like a million miles away, and yet, it was just a short drive. My hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel, trying to steady myself. The closer I got to that cafe, the more my mind spiraled. What was she going to say? Would she confess? Would she lie through her teeth? I didn't know what I was walking into, but I knew I had to face it, one way or another. When I arrived, Amelia was already sitting at a corner booth, her eyes scanning the menu as if she didn't know what was coming. She looked up when I walked in, her expression faltering for just a second, but she quickly masked it with a smile. It wasn't the usual smile. It was thin, tight, nervous. I could see the cracks in her composure, and in that moment, I knew everything I needed to know. She wasn't prepared for what was coming, but I was. I walked into the cafe with a calm I didn't feel. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I forced myself to move slowly, to look like everything was fine. I could see Amelia sitting at the back of the cafe, her eyes scanning the menu as if she didn't know what was coming. I noticed the way she nervously adjusted her hair, as if trying to make herself look more composed. I could almost hear the hum of her thoughts, the kind of thoughts that tried to disguise guilt, but never quite succeeded. When she looked up and saw me standing in the doorway, her expression faltered. Just for a split second, I caught it, that look of fear. It was brief, but it was enough. She quickly masked it with a smile, but it was too tight, too forced to be genuine. That smile didn't reach her eyes. In fact, her eyes seemed to be avoiding mine. She looked away, taking a deep breath before setting the menu down on the table in front of her. Hey, she said softly, almost too quietly. You made it. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I sat down across from her, watching her closely. The usual warmth I'd always felt toward her was gone. Now, I was looking at a stranger, someone who had kept things from me for so long that I wasn't sure if I even knew her anymore. The awkwardness between us was palpable, the kind that fills the air and makes it hard to breathe. We sat in silence for a moment, neither of us quite knowing where to begin. Finally, I broke the silence. I saw you last night. Her eyes flicked to mine, and I watched as her pupils widened just slightly. It was almost imperceptible, but it was there. She froze for a moment, her fingers tapping nervously on the table. I didn't wait for her to speak. I pressed on. I saw you with him, Amelia. The guy outside the bar. Who is he? Her face turned pale. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but the words didn't come out right away. I could see her thinking, weighing her options, trying to figure out how to explain her way out of this. But there was no way to spin it. There was no way to deny what I had seen, and deep down, she knew it. Look, Nathan, she said, her voice shaking slightly. It's not what you think. I couldn't contain my frustration anymore. I leaned in closer, my hands gripping the edge of the table. Not what I think. Amelia, I saw you with him. Laughing. Touching him. Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I wouldn't notice? Her face reddened, and she shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She looked away, her eyes darting across the room as if looking for an escape. It was nothing, I swear. You don't understand. It's complicated. I scoffed, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. Complicated? You're asking me to believe that what I saw last night was nothing? I never meant for you to find out like this, she said quietly, almost to herself. She finally met my gaze again, her eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Guilt, maybe? Or shame. Either way, it was enough to make my heart sink. You're right, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. It's complicated. But it's not what you think. I've been trying to figure things out, and I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you. I felt like I was suffocating. The more she spoke, the less sense she made. The silence in the cafe seemed to grow louder, more oppressive. People moved around us, but it felt like we were in our own little world, disconnected from everything. I could feel the tension rising, the weight of everything she was hiding pressing down on me. Figure things out. I repeated, my voice rising. What does that even mean, Amelia? You've been sneaking around with another guy, and now you're telling me it's complicated? How long has this been going on? She flinched, but I wasn't done. How long have you been lying to me, Amelia? I don't even recognize you anymore. The words hung in the air between us, thick and heavy. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath, as if trying to gather her thoughts. When she finally opened them again, there was a resigned look in her eyes. I didn't want it to happen like this. I didn't want you to find out this way, but I've been seeing someone else for months now. His name is Jack, and I don't know how to stop it. The confession hit me like a punch to the gut. The world around me seemed to blur, and for a moment, I couldn't even process what she had said. I felt like I was going to collapse, but I didn't. I just sat there, staring at her, trying to make sense of the words that had just come out of her mouth. You've been seeing him for months? I whispered, unable to fully comprehend it. And you never thought to tell me? You never thought to even talk to me about it? She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. I didn't know how, Nathan. I was scared. I didn't want to hurt you, and I didn't want to admit to myself that I was feeling things for him. Things I didn't feel for you anymore. The words stung, but they were the truth, weren't they? She was admitting it. She was telling me everything I needed to know, even though it felt like it was tearing me apart. For the first time in a long time, I felt completely empty. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had trusted with my life, had been living in a world of secrets and lies. And now, as I sat there in front of her, I realized that I didn't know who she was anymore. This wasn't the woman I had fallen in love with. I never wanted to hurt you, Nathan, she said, her voice cracking. But I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I can. And there it was, the truth. The raw, painful truth. The truth that had been staring me in the face the entire time, and I hadn't wanted to see it. The words hit me like a cold wave, sweeping away everything I thought I knew. I don't know if I can fix this. She had said it, and I heard it again and again in my mind, like an echo I couldn't escape. I stared at her, the woman I had once trusted with everything I was, and I wondered, was this the same person I had spent years with? Was this really the same woman who had promised to build a future with me? The silence between us stretched, suffocating. I couldn't find the words. What was there to say? What could I say to her that would make any difference? For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at the coffee cup between us, the steam long gone, replaced by the chill of betrayal. I was struggling to hold myself together, but it was getting harder by the second. I wanted to shout, to scream at her, to demand more answers. But my mind kept racing, the pieces of everything falling into place, each one sharper than the last. I wasn't just hurt by her actions. I was hurt by the person she had become. Someone who could hide something so monumental from me for months. My throat tightened as I looked up, meeting her gaze again. You really don't feel anything for me anymore, do you? My voice came out much calmer than I felt, like it was all I could do to stay composed. She didn't say anything at first, her lips trembling as she wiped away a tear. I saw the shame in her eyes, but I also saw something else, fear. Fear of losing me, fear of the consequences. But why? If she truly felt nothing for me, why was she still here, talking to me, trying to explain herself? Finally, she shook her head. No, Nathan, it's not like that. I never stopped caring about you. But somewhere along the way, I lost myself. And when Jack came into my life, everything changed. I didn't know how to talk to you about it. I didn't know how to tell you that I was feeling something I shouldn't have been feeling. My chest tightened. So what? You just let it happen? You let it go on for months, and all this time you've been lying to me, and now, you want me to believe that you care? She took a deep breath, her hands shaking. I do care, Nathan, but I wasn't being fair to either of us. I didn't know how to balance what I was feeling with what I knew was right, and I kept telling myself I could stop it, but I couldn't. I didn't know how. I wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to believe that she was just lost, that this wasn't entirely her fault. But another part of me, the part that had spent years building a life with her, was filled with rage, confusion, and disbelief. She hadn't been honest. She hadn't been fair. And now, here we were, two people sitting across from each other, with nothing but broken trust between us. I leaned back in my seat, running my hands through my hair. "You don't get it, do you?" I muttered, shaking my head. "You don't get what you've done to me. To us. You've destroyed everything." "I know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I know, and I hate myself for it. I never wanted to hurt you, but I did, and now I have to live with that." Her voice cracked, and I could see the tears forming in her eyes. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then the anger took over again. "You don't get to cry about this, Amelia. You don't get to sit here and act like everything is going to be okay. Because it's not." She flinched, as if my words had physically struck her. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I saw her struggle to find the right words, but she was speechless. And for once, I didn't want to hear her apologies. I didn't want to hear her explanations. It was too late for that. The damage had already been done. "I don't even know who you are anymore," I whispered, more to myself than to her. I felt the weight of the words, like they had been sitting at the bottom of my chest for months, waiting for this moment to come. Amelia flinched again, her face crumpling, as if my words were a physical blow. The waitress came by at that moment, breaking the tension for a moment, but I didn't acknowledge her. I didn't care. Amelia barely noticed her, her eyes still locked on mine, desperate, searching for something. "Nathan, please," she said, her voice desperate now. "I know I've messed up. I know I've hurt you, but I need you to understand. Jack wasn't about replacing you. I don't know how to explain it, but it wasn't about that. It was about me. It was about me feeling like I was losing myself." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout at her and tell her that this wasn't about her losing herself. It wasn't about her mistakes or her confusion. It was about me. About the years we had spent together, the life we had built, and how easily she had torn it all apart. But instead, I just sat there. I was too tired to argue. Too tired to fight for something that wasn't even there anymore. "Do you love him?" The question slipped out before I could stop it, and the moment the words left my mouth, I knew I didn't want the answer. But I had to know. I had to hear it from her. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she closed her eyes, like she was praying for some kind of miracle to fix everything. "I don't know," she finally said, her voice trembling. "I don't know what love is anymore." That was the moment it all broke. Everything I had been holding in, everything I had tried to keep together, shattered. I stood up from the table, the sound of the chair scraping against the floor harsh and loud in the quiet cafe. Amelia looked up at me, her face full of fear and regret. But I couldn't look at her anymore. I couldn't stand to be in the same room as her. Without a word, I turned and walked out. The door slammed behind me, and I didn't look back. I needed to get out of there. I needed to leave that place, that moment, everything behind. But no matter how fast I walked, how hard I tried to move forward, I couldn't escape the feeling that I had just lost something irreplaceable. That the life I had known was gone, and it wasn't coming back. The air outside felt different, colder, sharper, as if the world itself was trying to shake off the weight of everything that had just happened. I walked aimlessly down the street, my mind a swirling storm of emotions I couldn't quite pin down. I wanted to scream, to punch something, anything to release the frustration and hurt that had been building up inside me. But all I could do was keep walking, my feet carrying me away from the cafe, away from Amelia, away from everything I thought I knew. The city felt eerily quiet. People passed by, oblivious to the chaos raging inside me, and I envied them. I wished I could be like them, unaffected, able to go about their day without the weight of betrayal pressing down on them. But I wasn't. I couldn't stop thinking about the look on her face, the way she had sat there, so calmly, while she shattered everything we had built. I couldn't stop thinking about the man she had chosen, Jack. The thought of him made my blood boil, but it was more than that. I felt small, insignificant, as if I had been replaced by someone better, someone who could make her feel something that I no longer could. I found myself at the edge of a park, the sound of leaves rustling in the trees doing nothing to soothe my frayed nerves. I sat on a bench, my hands gripping the back of it as I tried to make sense of everything. It didn't feel real. I kept replaying the conversation in my mind, trying to understand how we had gotten here. How could Amelia, the woman I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, fall so far from who she once was? What happened to the woman who promised me everything, who shared her dreams and fears with me? How had we gone from late-night talks about our future to this? A broken mess of lies, guilt, and shattered trust. I pulled out my phone, half expecting a message from Amelia. But there was nothing. No text. No call. The silence was deafening, and I realized just how empty my phone had become. She had been my world for so long, and now, I had nothing left of her but the cold, impersonal screen. I wanted to reach out, to ask her more questions, to demand answers to the things that were left unsaid. But I didn't. I knew that talking to her now would only make it worse. There was nothing left to say that would change anything. The truth was, I didn't know what to do next. Part of me wanted to leave, to get as far away from this city, from this life, as possible. Maybe I could start fresh, leave everything behind, and never look back. But another part of me, the part that still loved her, that still cared about the life we had built, was terrified of losing it all. Losing her. I had no idea if we could fix this, if anything could ever be the same again. But the thought of her walking away with him, of her choosing him over me, gnawed at me. I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't just walk away and pretend like it didn't matter. As I sat there, the minutes dragging on, I realized that I needed to face her again. I needed answers. I needed to understand how this all happened, and why she had let it go on for so long. I couldn't just leave things like this, not with so many questions left unanswered. I stood up, determination setting in. I had to go back. I had to confront her one last time, and this time, it wasn't going to be just about the words we'd already exchanged. It was going to be about everything, about the life we had, about the future we had talked about, and about how it had all unraveled in a matter of months. There was no turning back after this. I didn't know what would happen, but I knew that I couldn't let it go without a fight. The drive back to our apartment felt like an eternity. The streets seemed endless, my mind racing with what I was about to do. I wasn't sure what I was going to say when I saw her again. I wasn't sure what I wanted from her, or if there was even anything left to salvage. But I knew I had to see it through. I had to find some kind of closure, or else this feeling of being adrift would never leave me. When I pulled into the parking lot, I saw her car, the one she'd left in such a hurry earlier, parked in its usual spot. My heart sank. I felt like I was walking into a battlefield, unsure of what I would find, unsure of what I was about to face. I took a deep breath and got out of the car, my hands still shaking from the tension I'd been carrying with me all day. I walked into the building, my footsteps heavy with the weight of everything that had transpired. The door to our apartment was slightly ajar, and I hesitated for a moment before pushing it open. The sight of her sitting on the couch, her face drawn and tired, only deepened the ache in my chest. She looked up as I entered, and for a brief moment, there was something in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. It wasn't the guilt or the shame I had expected. It was something else. Something broken. "Nathan, I didn't think you'd come back," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm here," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "And I need to know everything." Her eyes flickered with hesitation, and for a moment, I thought she might try to stop me, to convince me that it was all a mistake, that it could still be fixed. But instead, she just nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I owe you the truth," she whispered. "I owe you that much, at least." I took a step closer, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. The moment where everything would either fall apart completely or start to heal, even if just a little. But no matter what happened next, I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't live in this limbo anymore. It was time to hear the whole story. It was time to understand how we had gotten here, and whether there was any hope for us left. She took a shaky breath, and then she began. It started with small things, things I didn't think would matter at first. Her words came slowly, each one hanging in the air like a weight I didn't know how to carry. It started with small things. "Things I didn't think would matter at first," she said, her voice shaking, as if she was already bracing herself for the impact of what she was about to reveal. Her eyes were red, swollen from crying, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I reminded myself, she had brought this on herself. She had shattered everything we had, and now it was time to hear the truth. I don't know," she continued, her hands trembling as she folded them in her lap. "I was feeling disconnected, like I was living a life that wasn't mine, like I was going through the motions but not really living. And when I met Jack, I don't know, Nathan. He was different. He listened. He saw me. And I guess that made me feel seen in a way that I hadn't felt in a long time. Her words cut through me like a blade, each one more painful than the last. I had spent years with her, building a life, building memories, thinking that we were on the same page, that we were in it together. And now I was hearing that all of it, every moment, had been a facade for her. She had been looking for something else, something I couldn't give her. But the part that hurt the most wasn't the affair itself. It was the realization that I had been blind to it, that I had been so wrapped up in my own life that I hadn't noticed her drifting away. I didn't mean for it to happen, Nathan, she said, her voice cracking. It wasn't about wanting to leave you. It wasn't about finding someone better. It was about me, needing something I couldn't explain. I sat there, my heart heavy in my chest, but I couldn't let myself feel pity for her. Not now. Not after everything. So what? You just kept it going? You kept lying to me, telling me everything was fine while you were falling for him? My voice was low, steady, but the anger in it burned like fire. I didn't know if I was angry at her, angry at myself, or angry at the whole situation. I didn't want to hurt you, she said quickly, her eyes desperate. I never wanted to hurt you, but I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to fix what was broken. I felt like I was drowning, Nathan. And Jack, he made me feel alive again. For a while, at least. I stared at her, my thoughts whirling. Alive. That was the word she used. Alive. As if everything we had built together, everything we had shared, hadn't been enough. As if I had somehow failed her in a way that made her look elsewhere, to a man who didn't know her the way I did. A man who didn't care about the years we'd spent together, about the life we'd promised to share. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that she had let it go on for so long. She had let herself get tangled up in something she knew was wrong. And all the while, I had been oblivious. I thought we were fine. I thought we were happy. I had no idea she was out there with someone else, giving him parts of her that should have been mine. I felt betrayed in a way that was deeper than anything I had ever felt before. I kept telling myself I'd end it, that I would stop it before it went too far, she said, looking down at her hands. But every time I tried to walk away from him, something would pull me back. I don't know why. I just couldn't let go. The air between us was thick with tension, and I felt like I was suffocating. Part of me wanted to reach across the table and shake her, to demand that she make sense of all of this. But another part of me, the part that was still holding on to whatever hope remained, wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a way to fix this. But deep down, I knew there wasn't. The damage had been done. She had made her choice. And now, I was left picking up the pieces. I leaned forward, my voice barely above a whisper. And what about me, Amelia? What about us? What about everything we've been through together? I felt the lump in my throat, but I forced myself to keep going. You didn't think about me. You didn't think about what you were doing to us. I was here, thinking we were working on things, thinking we were building something, and you were out there. With him. Her face crumpled as she reached for my hand, her fingers cold against mine. I never wanted to hurt you. You have to believe that. I was just so lost, Nathan. So lost. I don't know what happened to me. I pulled my hand away, unable to let her touch me, unable to let her make me believe that everything she had done was somehow excusable. You don't get to say that, I said harshly, standing up. You don't get to make excuses for everything. You made a choice. And now, we both have to live with the consequences. I could see the tears in her eyes, the genuine pain in her expression, but it didn't matter. The words had already been said. The trust had already been broken. There was no going back from this. I couldn't just pretend like it didn't matter. I couldn't just forgive her because she was crying. I don't know if I can forgive you, Amelia, I said quietly, my voice shaking with the weight of it. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. Her face twisted in pain, and she opened her mouth to say something, but I couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear the apology that would come, the empty promises of change. I had heard it all before. I had been patient. I had tried to be understanding, but this was different. This wasn't something I could move past. Not without a piece of me breaking in the process. I turned away from her, my back stiff with resolve. I need some time, Amelia, I said, my voice cold. I need to figure out what I'm supposed to do next, because I'm not sure I want this anymore. With that, I walked out. The door closed behind me with a finality that echoed in my mind. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. I couldn't keep living in the past. I couldn't keep holding on to a woman who had already let go. And as I walked out into the night, I realized that this was the end of everything. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt so disconnected from everything around me. The world seemed to be moving in slow motion as I walked down the street, my mind still trying to process the conversation that had just shattered everything I thought I knew. The city was alive around me, people going about their business, their lives, but I felt like I was in a different world entirely, one where everything had crumbled, and I was left picking up the pieces of a life that no longer made sense. The weight of what had happened pressed down on me, every step heavier than the last. The house that had once been a sanctuary now felt like a cage. Amelia's face, her tears, her broken words, they were all swirling in my head, repeating over and over again like a broken record. But the more I thought about it, the more the truth became clear. There was no going back. She had made her choice, and I had been the one left in the wreckage. I didn't know what I was supposed to do now. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. Part of me wanted to hate her, to be angry and resentful, to make her pay for what she had done. But another part of me, the part that still cared for her, still loved her, was torn. How could I just turn off the feelings I had for her? How could I forget the years we'd spent together, the memories we had shared? I tried to focus, tried to push away the thoughts that kept creeping into my mind. But it was impossible. I couldn't stop thinking about her, about him, about what they had shared, about the time I had spent blind to it all. My mind kept going back to that moment in the cafe when she had confessed everything. I could still see her sitting there, her hands shaking, her voice barely above a whisper as she told me about Jack. She had been so honest, so raw, but the more she spoke, the more I realized that the woman sitting across from me was no longer the person I had known. She had become someone else entirely. I walked for what felt like hours, just trying to clear my head, but it was no use. I needed answers. I needed closure, but I knew that even if I confronted her again, even if I demanded the truth, it wouldn't change anything. The damage had already been done. And the worst part? I wasn't sure I even wanted to fix it anymore. I wasn't sure I could. When I finally returned home, the apartment felt colder than usual. The air was thick with the remnants of our conversation, the unsaid things that still hung between us like a heavy fog. I opened the door slowly, almost afraid of what I might find inside. But nothing had changed. Everything was still the same. The same furniture, the same cluttered counter, the same empty space where we had once shared our lives. It all felt so hollow now, like I was living in a memory that didn't belong to me anymore. I went straight to the bedroom, not knowing what I was looking for. I wasn't looking for answers. I was looking for something to hold on to, something that could help me make sense of the mess I was in. But there was nothing. There was no magic moment, no revelation that would make everything right again. There was just emptiness. As I stood there, staring at the bed that we had once shared, the bed that now seemed like a symbol of everything that had been taken from me, I heard the faint sound of footsteps behind me. I didn't have to turn around to know it was Amelia. I could feel her presence, the weight of her guilt and regret pressing down on me. She didn't speak at first, and for a long moment, neither of us moved. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Nathan, please. I'm so sorry. I know I've messed everything up, but I can't lose you. Please don't leave me." I turned around slowly, looking at her for the first time since our conversation in the cafe. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying, and there was a desperation in her voice that I had never heard before. She was reaching out to me, trying to bridge the gap between us, but it felt too late. Too much had happened, and I didn't know if I could ever go back to the way things were. "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Amelia," I said quietly, my voice hoarse. "I don't know if I can keep living in this lie, in this mess that you've made." Her eyes widened, and I could see the panic rising in them. She took a step closer, but I stepped back, my heart aching with every movement. "Please, Nathan, please don't do this. I love you. I need you." But I didn't know if I could believe her anymore. Love? Was that what this was? How could she say she loved me when she had been with him, when she had been lying to me for months? The betrayal cut deeper than anything else she could have done. I wanted to scream, to tell her that it was over, that I couldn't keep living like this, but the words wouldn't come. I felt like I was drowning in the emotions that were threatening to consume me. "I need time," I said, my voice breaking. "I can't do this right now. I need time to think, to figure out what I'm supposed to do next." She stood there, silent for a moment, and then nodded slowly, as if she understood. But I could see the hurt in her eyes, the fear that this might be the end. And for the first time, I wondered if it was. If this was the moment where everything truly ended. I turned away from her, walking toward the door. "I'm going for a walk," I said, my voice steady. "I need to clear my head." I didn't wait for her to respond. I just walked out, the door closing behind me with a finality that echoed in my chest. The weight of the decision hit me as I stepped into the night air, but it was too late for regrets. Too late for second chances. The world outside felt vast, open, like anything was possible. But all I could think about was how far I had fallen, how far we had fallen, and how I wasn't sure if there was a way back. The night air was cool against my skin as I walked through the empty streets, the rhythmic sound of my footsteps the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. I needed to clear my head, to put some distance between the pain I'd just confronted and whatever was left of the man I used to be. As I walked, I tried to shake the feeling that had been hanging over me all day, that crushing weight of betrayal, of loss. But as much as I tried to push it away, I couldn't escape the truth. Amelia had made her choices, and now I had to make mine. I walked for hours, lost in my own thoughts, unsure of where I was headed, but knowing that I couldn't go back to that apartment until I had answers, until I had figured out what was left for me. I needed to decide if I could forgive her, if I could ever trust her again. But deep down, I knew one thing. Forgiveness wasn't just about her. It was about me, too. It was about finding a way to let go of the anger, the hurt, and the disappointment that had been eating away at me. It was about choosing peace over the chaos. When I finally returned home, the first light of dawn was just beginning to break over the horizon. I stood in front of the door for a moment, gathering the courage to face whatever came next. The weight of everything was still there, but it wasn't as suffocating as it had been. I had spent the night wrestling with my emotions, and I had come to a conclusion. It wasn't about erasing the past. It wasn't about pretending like nothing had happened. But it was about choosing to move forward, to rebuild what we had lost, if we could. I opened the door slowly, the familiar smell of the apartment greeting me. I walked through the living room, and there she was, sitting on the couch, her face pale but her eyes clear. She had waited for me, knowing I needed time, and I could see that she was ready to face whatever decision I had made. Her eyes were filled with a quiet hope, but I could see the fear, too. The fear that this was the end, that the damage was too great for us to ever recover from. I took a deep breath and sat down next to her, the silence between us thick and heavy. For a long moment, neither of us spoke, but I knew what I needed to say. "Amelia," I began, my voice soft but steady. "I don't know if I can ever completely forget what happened. The hurt is still there, and it may always be there. But I can't let it destroy everything we've built. I can't let it define us." She looked at me, her eyes searching mine, as if trying to find the truth in my words. "I understand," she whispered. "I know I hurt you, and I'll never be able to undo that. But I want to spend the rest of my life trying to make it right, if you'll give me that chance." I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know what the future held. But I did know one thing. Forgiveness was a choice, and it wasn't something that came easily. But for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight of that decision lift off my shoulders. Maybe we could rebuild. Maybe we could find our way back to each other, piece by piece, even though the path ahead wouldn't be easy. I reached out and took her hand, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a glimmer of hope. "I'm willing to try," I said, my voice quieter now. "But it has to be different. We have to be different. No more lies. No more secrets." Her face softened, and she nodded, her tears flowing freely now. But this time, they weren't tears of regret. They were tears of relief, of hope. "I promise," she whispered. "I'll do whatever it takes." And for the first time in months, I felt the weight of the world ease off my chest. It wasn't going to be easy. We both knew that. But as I looked at her, I realized that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. One step at a time. The road ahead would be long, but it was a road we were willing to walk together. We weren't the same people we had been before. We had been tested, and we had been broken. But we were still here, still fighting for what we had. And that was enough. As I stood up, I reached out to pull her into a hug, and this time, it was different. There was no bitterness, no anger, just the quiet promise of a future that wasn't certain, but that we were both willing to fight for. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: peace. The storm had passed, and maybe, just maybe, we were going to be okay.